And proud to be here on the Voice of New York, 710 WOR. What a day it was watching that courtroom drama play out. This is just the beginning. This is going to go on for a month. Play out in a courtroom in Minneapolis. I'm so happy to be joined right now by somebody you've seen on television a lot. He is known as a legal expert. He is a defense attorney in Manhattan. He used to be a prosecutor. Please welcome to the show, Vinoo Varghese, who wrote an article for the New York Law Review called "To Ensure Justice for George Floyd, Derek Chauvin Must Get a Fair Trial." Hello, Vinoo. How are you?
I'm well, Larry. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I really appreciate you being here. Before we get to your article, can we just talk about the day? What did you see?
Well, I saw a lot of what you'd expect drama. There's also technical issues. Court TV, who I've been covering some of the jury selection for. I've been on there a few times, had a little technical glitch, it looks like. And, you have the dramatic opening statements, and you had the mixed martial artist saying, things that weren't good for the defense, but, they got to deal with it.
Yeah, but it's a long trial. I mean, yes, they do have to deal with it. I don't know if you heard how I opened the show, but what I was talking about is how difficult it is, which is why I thought your article was so interesting, how difficult it is in these high-profile cases with how we're so divided and how political the world is right now to get a fair trial, especially when it comes to a police officer and an African-American victim. Talk about, first of all, if you want to comment on that, feel free to, but I want to get to your article as well and why you think the way this even started out wasn't fair.
Well, look, in this case, the term victim is problematic, right? So prosecutors want to use that term all the time. I am a former prosecutor, and they love using that word, right? So there's somebody deceased here, right? Somebody died, but whether he's a victim or not is really at the heart of this trial. So for the defense point of view, they're going to say he wasn't a victim of Derek Chauvin. He was a victim of his own bad health, his own drug use, the fact that he had coronavirus. There are a number of things here that led to his death. That's what the defense is going to focus on, or they should be focusing on if they want to see Chauvin acquitted here. The prosecution is banking on a couple things. One, that video, and the hope that people can't get over that video. The other thing they've banked on is some favorable court rulings for them, one of which is getting a third-degree murder charge reinstated. See, why this is important is basically, in my view, the only legitimate charge is second-degree manslaughter. Basically, that Chauvin ignored a grave risk of death in keeping his knee on Floyd's neck. I mean, I think that's a reasonable charge and one that, is beatable if you're a defense attorney, but that's their closest charge. What the prosecution has gone and they've overcharged, and that's what I wrote about, with a second-degree homicide charge and a third-degree homicide charge, which doesn't even fit the bill. But they got a favorable ruling from a mid-level appellate court, which may not be the worst thing for Chauvin if he gets convicted, because if he is convicted, then this case could get reversed on appeal. I know that's a lot to throwing at you, trying to keep it as simple as I can. But the prosecution wants to hammer that video home. And as the defense attorney said during his opening today, there's a lot more here than just 9 minutes and 40 seconds.
No, it was interesting because you compared the case to the case of, everybody remembers Daniel Pantaleo, who was charged with the chokehold crime. But you pointed out that it took a while for the police, for him to be charged. It took a while before that happened. It was almost as if they were being thoughtful, even though there was a lot of pressure to be charged, and it went to a grand jury, and he was finally not charged. You compared that to the way this case was handled, where there seemed that there was some politics involved, and you called it charge stacking. That
Right.
in response to public pressure, there was abuse of prosecutorial discretion. Explain that. Explain the difference between the two.
Well, I think the Garner case, you can't rush these things. And the Garner case took a long time, I feel, in some sense, too long. But at least they went to a grand jury. They presented it. He was not the case. The grand jury voted not to proceed. That's all the grand jury is doing, deciding on whether a case is going to proceed to the next stage or not. So they voted not to proceed. Then there was family pressure. The Department of Justice was asked to review. The Department of Justice ultimately chose not to charge Pantaleo. And then it took almost 5 years for him to be fired in that case. In this case, the officers were basically fired the next day and charged within days. I mean, everything moved at the speed of light. And then additional charges were added that aren't appropriate here. Second-degree murder and third-degree murder just don't fit what you saw. And there's no doubt in my mind that the prosecution, Keith Ellison, in response, probably at the governor's behest, added these other charges to ensure that Chauvin is convicted of something, because the only legally viable charge is the manslaughter. And if he's convicted of something else, then it actually could work out for Chauvin in terms of appeal, but who knows how many years he may be spending in prison while if he has to appeal. But prosecutors should not be responding to public pressure. They've got to look at things and make a decision. Does this fit? And it's my view, and I wrote an article that was published, as printed in the New York Law Journal and published online on law.com, that said that Ellison, the Attorney General, overcharged, and it's actually a very bad thing for criminal justice. That the prosecutors should not be responding to public outcries, or else what's the point? I've heard so many people saying, I think it was the lawyer for George Floyd, who said something along the lines of, the only way justice is going to be achieved is with a guilty verdict. Well, then what's the point of a trial, right? If guilt is a foregone conclusion, then there shouldn't be a trial. They should be.
But guilt seems like it was a foregone conclusion all along in this case. I've been listening to the coverage, and some of it has been horrifying. It seems like this trial has already been decided. And it seems that way from the people that are scared that Minneapolis is going to riot again and that it's going to spread across the country, from the chanting outside, from the protesters, from the politics of Minnesota, and the way the country's divided. Is it possible in a case like this nowadays for a police officer to get a fair trial?
Well, I think it is possible if you have the right team of lawyers and making the right moves and being aggressive enough. My concern is watching the jury selection that his team, which seems to be two people, not big enough, weren't aggressive enough in some of their challenges. Now, getting back to the idea of what could happen, you got to understand, when this happened over the summer last year or May, the country was in lockdown. There was something was going to happen that was going to cause this country to explode. And this came along and led to the explosions. If you didn't have the lockdowns that you had across the country, you don't see the violence, you don't see the response to this that you would have seen in this country and worldwide. I mean, people forget George Floyd is no hero, was no hero. He was a violent felon who had committed a armed robbery, a home invasion of a pregnant woman, and had done time for that. And the cops here were responding. They had probable cause to arrest. Now, whether that turned into something that became criminal, well, that's for this jury to decide. But if you didn't have...
Vinoo, I'm sorry about this, but you're making a great point, and I have to cut you off just for time, and I apologize so much. Do you have a quick way to wrap that up? Is there a point you needed to make at the end?
Yeah, I'm going to say is that, look, hopefully we've had time. The country is opening up a bit. And hopefully these jurors will do their duty and follow the evidence wherever that evidence may lead. And that it's not a foregone conclusion that he's guilty, but that if he is guilty, the prosecution proved it, and not because the country needed Chauvin to go down.
Amen to that. Thank you so much. Vinoo Varghese, you were wonderful. I'd love to check in with you again as we go along with this trial, if that's okay.